Good evening, everybody. It's the Old Wolf here again, joining you March 15th, 2022, upstate New York, Rochester. The Rock coming at you live again for another episode of The Witch and Wolf Wisdom. Tonight's episode 21, Through a Mirror Darkly. No coincidence, tapping into some of that old background element to kind of create that. Yes, Through a Mirror Darkly. And for those of you who don't know, it does, at least in my particular case, and Sean and I had a conversation earlier about this, it does reflect my exposure as a kid to Star Trek, the original series, and some of the elements that were addressed back in the day by Gene Roddenberry and his crew. Hey, Lee, Barbara, hello to everybody tonight. Thank you for joining us.
Welcome, welcome.
Welcome, welcome. So yes, I like having little things to kind of throw in there to keep the vibe interesting, to keep it a little bit different, as they say. I have played around with this context before, and again, it's something that for me, a lot of philosophical and moral elements and things were very much a part of that aspect. And for anybody who's familiar with Star Trek, and again, specifically the original series, it did tackle a lot of elements of things at the time that were not only not so much spoken of, but really had no framework. Aspects of racism and environmental issues, aspects of sexuality and the parameters in which men and women of all different races interact. So yes, we also discussed, as mentioned a couple of minutes ago, the biblical element that is referenced with the Through a Mirror Darkly. And I will toss this to you, since this is obviously...
it just comes from a quote, and as you mentioned, it was in Corinthians, from Through a Glass Darkly, that, we don't see things perfectly from our current existence, that we see things through a glass darkly, and the analogy being that, you kind of like those mirrors that are somewhat occluded, or those windows that are somewhat occluded, and you're staring through it, and you can't really see, you can kind of see shapes and stuff like that. And, as you get more aware, or in the biblical sense, as you cross to the other side, you understand, blah, 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 then you see things more for what they really are. But
and that is definitely one interpretation.
Yeah, I would definitely say we see through a glass darkly most of the time, because we don't always see the crap that's going on behind the scenes.
And it also talks a little bit about our motives when elements of things are not what they appear to be. Mm-hmm. Now, again, in the biblical context, Paul talks about the elements of Christianity having to be based from a framework, a context of love, and that love being the core foundational element that was spoken of through the Gospels and stuff like that. So, like a lot of things, take what you need, leave the rest behind. Some of it is interpretation. Some of it is obviously
the way it is,
perspective-driven.
There's a lot of different wisdom points that can be found. If you take the dogmatic elements out of some of these holy books that are out there, you can find a lot of...
You can make a case for it. Absolutely.
In these various holy books, because, most of the time, and not always, but most of the time, the people writing it had halfway decent intentions. Whether that was used rightly further down the line or not, but most of the time...
like a lot of things, interpretation gets twisted through the time period. Yes. Brother Josh, great to see you, and Pam and Deli, great to see you too. Glad to hear, Pam, that you woohoo are feeling great.
I am so glad, Pam. Pam was working on her joy. That was something we had discussed, that she has been working on finding and expressing her joy.
That's beautiful to hear.
Yes, so I am glad that she is expressing joy. We have to find joy in the little things,
Listen, absolutely. Sometimes the only defense we have against
Her defense against the dark arts.
Defense against the dark art is to find some aspect of a silver lining, some aspect of humor, glass half full.
Yeah.
At least I didn't shit myself today. Hey, you know what I mean?
That's
always a positive.
When you can take a fart safely, that's a good thing.
Well, when you put it like that, yeah. You know what I mean?
Any day you're not pushing up daisies, you're doing halfway decent.
Yes, and we can definitely agree on that. Brother John, great to see you as well, too. One of the little things I'm going to talk about, and perfect timing because my brother John is here. One of the things that Shiya and I have been making a point of is trying to do things, interactively. It's why we're doing the contest. It's why we do some of the music and the workshops and things like that, a little bit outside the box. And one of the things John and I have been working on, and we had released the preliminary version of a track called Time of the Phoenix, which is now getting redone with Matt Brown, the guy that I'm working with locally.
Very talented.
I'm going to promo one of the new tracks. It's not going to be released out there, but I am going to promo it out tonight for everybody that's been here and been supporters. So to give you guys,
they get a preview.
So they get a first taste on it. You know what I mean?
I'm excited.
One of the things that John had spoken with, was last night or the night before?
Night before, I think.
Night before, John?
No, I think it may
last night before.
Yes.
I had been, casually chatting with John, and then John had, texted, contacted Shiya and stuff. But he basically took one of the elements from the podcast we did the other night and came up with an idea. Shiya loved it. I thought it was great. I was like, yeah, fuck yeah, let's do this. So, long story short, for anybody that wasn't here last week, we got a little bit deep into the
shit storm.
Well, we got deep into the anal cavities of a couple different elements of things. We'll just say it like that. But anyway, his context, and I thought it was a really good one. I'm going to put it up here. It's one of the things we're going to be doing. And it was just something that I came up with. And it was basically an analogy. If you blow smoke up someone's ass, don't be surprised when they shit in your mouth. Yeah. Now, again, Brother John had the great idea of bringing the beaver into it, because this kind of all started with the beaver ass.
Have a beaver holding a thing of vanilla and toking on a...
Yes, there are a couple of different...
toking on a point.
dynamics that are still... But this is the basic concept, and I think it's a good one, and we're going to run with it, and we're going to make a limited edition basically
beaver shirts.
Call it defense against the narcissist, just to kind of put something out there. I mean, listen, we got memes all over the place. We've got bumper stickers and t-shirts and sweatshirts. Half of our culture is just based on these little interactive elements. Nike says just do it. Have a Coke and a smile.
And the wolf says, don't be surprised when somebody shits in your mouth.
Well, again, I think it's a safe and fair analogy. If you blow smoke up somebody's ass, you shouldn't be surprised when they shit in your mouth. It's a natural, I think, response.
And honestly, I think that if you look at the media and everything else, this is a great thing to kind of combat the defense against the dark arts with some of the crazy ass blowing smoke up your ass media stuff out there right now.
I mean, again, imagine an alternate reality, a Marvel What If episode.
Oh dear.
Where basically somehow the cosmic universe created some type of compensating factor that basically was like, if you blow smoke up somebody's ass, in other words, if you gaslight them, if you bullshit them, if you manipulate them, that there would be this universal trigger that basically would mean as soon as you were done opening your mouth with the bullshit, your mouth would literally be filled with shit. So it would be kind of like this double tap thing where if you fucking talk shit, you end up with literal shit in your mouth, and then the rest of us out there in the world, I mean, it's not going to be hard to identify the shit talkers, because literally they're going to have shit in their mouth.
Talk shit.
Their breaths are going to smell like shit. So it's going to,
it's going to be shit.
Hey, listen, if nothing else, the value in stock of Listerine is going to fucking skyrocket. Okay.
Oh,
but I think a lot of us can agree, especially in the here and now, there's not a whole lot out there. There's nothing really stopping from people, talking shit. And listen, I'm just as guilty. I'm out here talking shit. That's why some of you are here, is to hear me talk shit.
Yeah, but
there's
you're
different...
not talking shit. You're speaking.
Oh, I'm talking shit.
And you're opening the conversation, because you are perfectly fine with opposing viewpoints.
Absolutely.
You're perfectly
Unless
fine
you're a Scientologist.
Unless you're a Scientologist, you're perfectly fine with finding a middle ground, or saying, okay, you believe that way, I believe this way. That's nice. We can still. Why can't we be friends?
I would love to be able to, again, to the best context available. We can agree to disagree, but I would love for people to be able to find at least some basic middle grounds, so that way we're not
Science.
dancing so deeply in the fucking insanity that they're just, there's no recourse. But again,
Who would enjoy? I would wear that shirt. I would totally wear that shirt.
yeah, see, we're going to definitely do it. It is something that is going to be coming down the pike. I think it's good, you know what I mean, to give, tangible elements to, conceptual ideas, be it philosophical, be it, comedy, be it even to some degrees, the pain and traumas and shit that we carry. Those of you, again, that know me know that I am huge on the let's twist it with a little bit of dark humor. You know what I mean? Humor is a powerful weapon, as is music. And music can shift the dynamic. It can change the energy many times.
Very much so.
Now, in that framework and in that spirit, I'm going to jump in a little bit real quick about the writers' contest that's going on. We got a couple more weeks. Gotten some really great submissions.
We have, and some very personal ones, too.
Yes, and very personal ones. It's going to be very difficult. I may use more than one of them, depending upon how this plays out. But regardless, there's no purchase necessary. Send your submissions to contest@ladyshiya.com. It can be a poem, a spell, a mantra. Try and keep it under 50 words, but if you got to go over 50 words,
keep it somewhere
like Ash Buck,
yeah,
that's okay. It's all right. We're going to let that ride. It's going to be about, we're going to do prizes. There are going to be private readings, gift certificates from Mystical Moons.
Yes.
Who is so graciously helping out with this particular thing.
So awesome. We love Suzanne from Mystical Moons. We love all of our Suzannes. We have a couple Suzannes, and we love them. They're great. The
Mystical Moons, again, for those of you who don't know, I put the information up there. Some really great stuff. And if you just mention Shiya and myself, you get a 25% discount off your
first order. Yay.
And she's got some really nice stuff at some really good prices. One of the beautiful things about the way that we and she and a lot of others are doing things, we don't have, ridiculous overhead costs. Again, that's not to begrudge anybody who's out there, running a little store or, a kiosk or however everybody's doing it. But there is a case to be made that, depending upon your overhead, those costs get translated down to everybody else.
Yeah.
I think everybody's noticed that gas prices are a little bit wacky. So by default, your Ubers and your Lyfts are going to be more, and anything that involves transportation costs, that's the way, Yeah,
the overhead's definitely going up, even for those.
That's the way the economy works.
Major overhead.
Right.
Yeah.
So the little things, and they make a difference, especially if these types of things speak to you. They're great, for ritualistic elements. They're great little things for gifts.
Yeah.
And obviously, to whatever degree, something speaks to you, that is what it is. So, yes, again, can't say enough about, Suzanne and Mystical Moons. And again, she's graciously,
oh, wonderful. Yes.
Helping us out. So there will be gift certificates for all the prizes, first through third. Again, the first will be basically the songwriting credit and us taking, the words and putting it into a song that will be going, as an official release.
Yeah.
The gift certificate and, some private readings either by myself or you, depending upon, if people want the wolf interpretation versus, the witch's interpretation. And yes, Brother John, you can save 15% or more on gas by switching to Taco Bell, which is, no coincidence, getting back deep into that.
Hold on, can I do it?
That colonic element of...
I want to do something. You'll probably want to kill me for it, but I want to do it.
Well, I mean, you can go ahead and roll the dice.
I'm gonna roll the dice. Beans, a magical fruit. The more you eat, the more you toot. The more you toot, the better you feel. Beans with every meal.
Well, there you have it. The horror, the nightmare made real.
Had to do it.
Yeah, I've seen a couple of those elements where, the memes about, the Taco Bell, being the cheaper gas. I've seen a couple that were like, alterations of like the Calvin Klein or like those cologne type commercials where it's like black and white. You've got the woman silhouetted with the guy, right in there. And it's just like, oh, what's that? That smell, honey.
Can't you smell that smell?
Can't you smell? Oh, what is that? And, the guy replies, oh, it's Chevron unleaded.
Oh, dear.
Yes.
Smells like...
so, yeah, that's got, listen, I understand. And here it is. We live in a world, at least within Western culture. I'll speak just for, the framework here within the United States. That we're accustomed to certain elements of things. We have certain expectations of our freedoms and what certain things should be worth.
Yeah.
I get it. You know what I mean? I don't understand, the reality sometimes on how certain things translate the way they are. But having lived through, a couple of presidencies and cultural elements and stuff, I can say honestly that this cycle I don't think is, again, reflective of politics or any of the other, crazy little tinfoil hat types of things. Don't get me wrong, everybody's entitled to their opinion. But those of you like me who grew up in the 70s during, the real gas crisis where people were fucking lined up for miles down highways trying to get a gallon of gas, or the flip side perspective of most of the other world does not have access to the elements of gasoline and vehicle aspects.
I remember not too terribly long ago having $4.50 a gallon in gas in Texas.
Yeah, listen, a
few years back.
Prices, welcome to, this is how capitalism works.
Yeah,
this is the market. Don't kid yourself for a second.
That's when I was running a photography studio, and I had a photographer yelling.
It could be a hurricane. It can be, another country invading another country. We went through this during both the Iraq fiascos. We went through this in many elements after 9/11. We've seen it within aspects of recessions, but. And again, doesn't take a rocket scientist to look at this. If you look at the books for all, and I'm talking all, of the oil/petroleum production companies from BP on down the line, they've been making billions of dollars of profits every fucking year. So it didn't matter how bad it was for the rest of us out here.
Right.
They still been making buku money, but yet, for some reason, too, they don't have to pay taxes. So, again, I would humbly suggest to folks on both sides, take a look at it just beyond the aspect of what's been happening in the last year or two or 4 or 8 even. Regardless of, if you think Hillary Clinton is, serving up, baby pizzas in Washington, D.C. somewhere, or if you happen to subscribe to the idea that, Trump really was the Antichrist in a cheap suit.
Yeah,
neither are real. Neither, what I mean? Neither are real.
I don't think Trump is capable of being an
effective. Listen, again, politics and money and business and all these things, they're all intertwined. And I think most people who are, as we like to talk about in the middle, recognize that it's both ends of the spectrum. When you have corporate interests, big money interest,
money
calling the shots about how our medicines are made, or the foods that we get to eat, or the air that we breathe, or the water that we drink, there's an inherent problem. And it's, again, it's not about politics. It's class. It is simply about money. And historically, and this is a viewpoint that is shared on both sides of the spectrum, left and right, that class warfare is really what we've been seeing for at least a couple of generations.
Oh, yeah.
And it's easier to keep people distracted by the stupid shit so they don't focus on what's actually real. Because when they're distracted by the stupid illusionary shit, the fat cats keep getting to cash checks at the bank, and we've seen this generationally.
Follow the money.
Follow the money.
That's the way it's always been. Hey, Christine. And Jonathan I gotta make like a baby and head out. That's hilarious, Jonathan.
Yeah.
That's hilarious.
Brother, we love you. We will talk to you soon. I will keep you in the loop on the t-shirt. But yes, it will be a reality. But again, back to the original thing. It's not all gloom and doom. Within, the rally that they had. And again, for those of you that actually follow elements of finance and Wall Street and shit like that, oil hit a bit of a, peak. Some of those long-term, traders and stuff like that made some cash on some commodities and futures, and oil bottomed out again. And guess what? You're going to see the shift, and it's going to go back down. Some of it is, supply elements. I hate to say it, but you know what I mean? Certain things are, unfortunately, reflective of our lifestyles. Okay? Think about it. You know what I mean? When we have a population that, again, continues to refuse to look at bottom line elements. Everybody wants to drive the big fancy truck and the big fancy SUVs, and we want to have multiple cars and stuff like that. But guess what? Resources are not finite.
No. Well, they are finite. You said they are
actually, thank you for correcting me. Resources are finite. In other words, the shit's going to run out.
Yeah.
Okay. So for every vehicle, for every person, you're pulling out of the available pool, and it stands to reason that at some point, as there's less of it, the price is going to go up. Okay? That's just the way it works. A free market society, again, granted, people have every right to make a profit, to make a living. However, we have to, again, make certain, choices and decisions. For some of us, there is no middle room. If you have to look at the context, especially, if you're a single parent, or if you're a senior citizen, or if we were talking about, veterans and stuff like that, if you're on a fixed income for whatever reason and stuff like that, it's incredibly difficult to be able to dance outside the box.
Well, especially if you're
there's no room for it.
Like you said, fixed income, if you're on like Social Security or anything like that, those income sources have not been even mitigating for inflation. They haven't for a long time. And myself, like a lot of others, when you want to talk about, your pet peeves or the classic Peter Griffin, really grinds my gear moment, our vets, are paid less than a fucking fry cook at McDonald's for all intents and purposes. There's something fucked up with that. Okay? I don't care which side of the spectrum you're on. I don't care if you're a Republican or a fucking Democrat. Our veterans, our service personnel deserve better. Yeah.
Okay? They really deserve better.
They really do.
Okay? It's a real simple context. We need to be able to take care of our own. It shouldn't matter. Our nurses, okay? Our first responders, our police officers. You want better police officers? Guess what? We have to do a better job in regards to how we take care of them, so that we were not just attracting fucking high school bully wannabes and the fucking neo-Nazi militia types.
We don't need to necessarily defund the police. We need to fund the police and
we need to fund them correctly, to give them the tools and the resources.
Fund them properly,
Because for every bad cop, there are two good cops struggling.
But, bad apples spoil the bunch. It happens. There are bad apples in there.
I've talked about this many times, and I will continue to talk about it. Just because somebody is over on the right does not make them a Nazi, and just because somebody's over on the left does not make them a socialist or a communist.
Right.
You know what I mean? It is much broader, much more, encompassing than just you know what I mean? Hey. Now, granted, certain actions and behavioral patterns definitely make a case So, if you're marching down the street in a white hood, burning a cross, talking about, killing the Jews, fuck you, you gotta go, you're a Nazi, okay? Now you've given up the...
You're shaving, you're wearing the white hood, you're shaving your head, you're putting swashing.
Now there's no ambiguity. Now there is no middle ground.
You're done.
So again, and in the same instincts, you know what I mean? If you're over on the left, talking, some crazy communist type of shit, you know what I mean? Most Americans are not going to buy into it. They don't want to hear it. You know what I mean? Too much blood, too much has been fought for in this country to preserve basic elements of democracy. And I don't want that to sound like, I'm one of those, crazy communist conspiracy type of things. But communism has been proven not to work because any theoretical context goes out the window once you bring human fallibility into it.
Do you remember that show they did that was Survivor-ish, but it was called Utopia? Did you ever see that?
Nope.
They actually created this little area and tried to make it into a utopian type society thing. And it took all of 3 episodes for everything to completely break down.
Well, no.
I mean, even without them kind of putting in little challenges and stuff like that, they told everybody, they were very transparent. This is your resources. This is what you have. This is what you got to do. And it still all went to hell in a handbasket.
And it typically does. Now, again, on the flip side, I do believe that we should be able to take care of our senior citizens. We should be able to take care of our sick.
We should have social programs. There's the good context to have social programs to take care of things. I fully believe that we should have universal health care. I believe that health care should be a right, not a privilege.
But we also need to fix our pharmaceutical system so that way, again,
instead of just throwing
so that diabetic medications and things like that aren't ridiculous. And it's ridiculous. There's no framework for it. It's greed.
I talked to one of my friends, the one I told you about earlier today. I told you about this, where she needs a refill on her prescription. I found out what prescription it was she needed refilled. Her glucose monitor needs refilling, and she can't get an appointment for a month. They won't give her another refill. She has to go to her primary doctor first to get another referral to the endocrinologist that she's been going to for 3 years, to jump through all of these hoops to get an overpriced medication that is necessary for her survival.
And Shannon, you hit on a good point. A lot of this is politics. Okay? We dance around a lot of these elements because they've become politicized, and within politics you have rhetoric, and within rhetoric you have misinformation, you have deception, and that unfortunately breeds elements of contempt, fear, apathy, disconnect. So in many ways, a lot of us, and I'll just use us in a generalized term, not specifically anybody out there, but if it applies to you or me, hey, wear it, because that's the only way things change. But we don't understand a lot of these things because we're not communicating. We're not looking beyond the flashpoints of things. And listen, there's a great point. Shannon just hit right on that. Let's ban lobbying.
Yeah, that'll never happen.
Listen, but it could very easily. We never had it before. Okay?
But it happens.
And lobbying, basically,
they do it. I think they just have a lot more restrictions in a lot of other countries about lobbying.
Again, common sense would say that if you allow money, influence peddling, which is all lobbying is, it's money behind the influence element, you're not going to get results that are for the greater good. You're going to get results that are based on whoever's paying the most. And human nature, and we know this historically, there's no way, and this is one of those lines that I'll draw and say, hey, guess what? No, you don't get to cross it, because we know this historically. Humanity and money is a bad fucking combination. Now, that's not to say everybody is that way, but it tends to play out that way more times than not. So, I mean, again, originally our system was designed to remove those elements, money and religion. Very specifically,
I
it
have
says
2 words that I think are really, really important that we need to apply to shit. 2 words: term limits across all 3 branches.
term
of
limits would
government.
be great. I'm with Shannon.
There's a reason.
We have to get Citizens United reversed. We have to get money out of politics.
Yes.
Okay.
And term limits,
Government
I think, is the way
service
for it.
should just be that. It should be a civil service.
Yes.
You remove the money dynamic and you
get paid for
remove.
it, but if you do term limits, at least you don't have professional.
Listen, I would personally rather see people, you know, again, that don't need to get paid to do it.
Yeah.
Okay. John Adams didn't need to get paid
But
to
then
do it.
Then we're relegating our entire government to the top 1%. So, like,
No,
good,
not
decent
necessarily.
living,
Not necessarily.
Could you survive a year and a half, 2 years, 4 years?
Me personally, but again, we really don't want, and I'm just going to say this for what it is, we don't want just anybody serving in the government. You need to have certain elements, certain standards. We need to have educated people. We need to have open-minded people, and we need people that are removed from some of the dynamics that we know do not work. The money, the rhetoric.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And again, I don't say this to begrudge anybody else's belief. I try and look at it again, and, you know, going back to the earlier Star Trek analogy, you know, the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few or the one.
Yeah.
Monica says she just sent in now her poem that she wrote for her dear friend's funeral when she was chosen to be the speaker, who passed away when you were 18 years old of an overdose.
Wow, I can't wait to read that.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. I will definitely be looking at that tomorrow when we go through some of the other ones.
Yes. We've
Listen,
got some great submissions.
And that's a great segue to kind of, you know, go into, you know, the next part here, you know, with some of the music. And I've talked about this a lot. Music is an expression that has so many different elements of the spectrum. It can reflect love, it can reflect pain, it can reflect fear, it can reflect hope. These spectrums can also encompass our experiences, our shared thoughts and visions, philosophies. I mean, again, you can go so many different directions with it. It can be political. Chris, I'm with you with your father. I think the folks in DC should be like jury duty. You know, keep it, you know, isolated from the elements that we know fuck things up.
Yep.
Okay. And again, you just remove the component. Okay. So if you don't have money in play, then you don't have to worry about, you know, people cutting side deals because there is no money involved. Now, again, I'm not saying
We had a mayor
that people shouldn't be able to make a living and should have access to a good life and stuff. But again, there was a reason, and if we're using the dynamic of our country, there was a reason our country was founded with the context of the separation of church and state, that we didn't have these elements when we first started. Granted, we weren't anywhere near the size, but the philosophy still remains the same. You have to remove these elements in order to maintain a societal system that works. That is the framework for what really democracy is. And, you know, it doesn't matter if you're talking about democracy from the context of, you know, back in the days of Rome within the Republic, or, you know, democracy in its many nuanced forms in developing countries, or our own interpretation of it today. And Sabrina, like you, I know people who run and hold office in different levels and positions and stuff like that who are fucking criminals. Listen, I know junkies that are more fucking trustworthy than some of the people that are out there. That's not to say everybody. It's not to say everybody.
Famous quote: "I am not a crook."
Yeah, well,
I am not a crook.
listen, I think a lot of people, and again, I was young when Nixon does his dance, but, you know, again, contextually, I would rather have Nixon right now than some of these other characters. So, like, you know, using the earlier analogy, and I'm going to say, if you gave me a choice between Tricky Dick and Mitch McConnell,
I forgot his nickname.
I would send Mitch McConnell into the fucking multiverse.
I wouldn't wish Mitch McConnell on my worst enemy.
And I would carry Richard Nixon in on my back. Like it was the St. Patty's Day fucking parade. Because let me tell you, that man was much more of a fucking lesser evil than some of these other assholes that are running out there.
Yep.
Keep in mind, he went down for some fucked up shit. He made some mistakes. He definitely did.
His big mistake was he got caught.
But listen,
he did the same thing.
But also, in fairness, he got our service people out of Vietnam when most of the military didn't want to. They wanted to escalate it, and he didn't want kids dying anymore. He didn't want it on his conscience. So he got us out of a fucking very unpopular war. He was the first one to open up our communications originally with China. We used to have a good relationship with China. We did business with them. We interacted and stuff. And then somewhere along the line, the rhetoric and, the bullshit. And listen, both sides got to play in it. I know people who are Chinese. They're Americanized, they're Westernized, but they, some of them are first, second generation. And they will tell you, that it's not pretty, when you have that type of kind of, and I call it a bastardized version of communism because it really isn't fucking communism. Don't kid yourself for a second if you think China really is a true communist country.
State religion.
Right. They've taken communism and warped it, not unlike how Henry VIII took,
Catholicism,
Christianity and just turned it into his own fucking variation. The common people, the ordinary Chinese people, they don't think this way. They don't fucking act this way. They don't want to deal with this shit. Let me tell you, you talk to, certain parts, they have, re-education camps where they send, Muslims to be fucking converted.
Oh my God.
You talk to the Tibetan monks and they'll tell you about generations of fucking atrocities. So, again, I'm not saying, hey, China's cool, but they do not reflect, and I think it's the same thing within our country because it, you go to other places in the world and they think that we're all trying to just grab pussy like Trump. And it's just like, no, I don't identify with the man. Please don't. And this is the problem that happens. Is things get stereotyped. They get polarized.
Well, I met a couple of Chinese tourists when I was living in Texas, and we have the tourist zone, the stockyards there. And we sat down and we exchanged cigarettes. They wanted some American cigarettes, and we gave them Chinese cigarettes. And, we started talking about China and Tiananmen Square, and they were surprised. And I mentioned Tiananmen Square, and they look at me.
There's a great analogy.
You've heard about that?
A lot of people don't remember that.
We don't talk about that. We're not allowed to talk about that.
And a lot of people paid the price in blood, for that aspect.
Yeah.
There's also a case to be made, and we've seen this historically. It happened after 9/11. Everybody thought, anybody, who, had any type of Muslim affiliation must be a terrorist.
Yeah.
And the truth is that, 99% of the Muslim population has no context, no element of terrorism or any of that shit.
I will quote
just because Timothy McVeigh was a fundamental Christian terrorist, okay? And remember this in the context. Timothy McVeigh blew up a federal building, okay, and was a self-proclaimed religious militant, okay? Now, does that mean that all Christians now somehow should be labeled? It's the same analogy as saying, anybody who's German, therefore must be a fucking Nazi. It's fucking insanity.
It is.
It's absolute insanity.
It goes back to one of my favorite quotes from Shakespeare: "The evil men do live after them, but the good is often turned with their bones." It's more sensationalist to talk about all the bad shit that this person did and that person did and this group did and label the entire group.
I mean, again, we are privileged within the framework, at least within Western culture, that we have all these beautiful elements of technology and we get to complain about gas prices and, who's fucking who, or...
We have more access to information than we've ever had.
Yeah. Whereas in most places in the world, they're just like, I hope my goat doesn't die today.
Meh.
Truthfully, though, you know,
no, it is.
We are
We're
privileged. We are lucky.
Yes.
Now, that doesn't mean that people haven't earned it.
No.
And that's not to say, well, just because everyone else has got it shitty, that somehow we should feel. No. But at some point, I think there is a bit of a moral responsibility, at least not to be assholes about it. You know what I mean? Again, it's, you know, that kind of grayish area. Yeah. I don't want to be an asshole. You know, I don't want people to suffer and die. But I also know in the same instance, we can't take care of our own. How the fuck can we just keep trying to bring people in here if we can't take care of our own? So, you know, we have to be smarter, I think, about certain elements. Now, does this mean that do I subscribe to the thing that just because somebody's an immigrant, they must be a drug dealer or a rapist or a murderer? God, no. Guess what? Unless you're fucking Native American, you're a fucking immigrant. At some point in time, your people, your family, your ancestors came here. Okay? That makes us immigrants. So, you know.
I'm half and half. I've got some immigrant and I've got some Native American in me, so a little bit of both.
You know, and again, we can learn from our past. Yeah. You know, it's one of the things, again, that I think, and I've talked about this a little bit, that really has polarized us, are these elements, and we can't talk about the past. You know what I mean? If you talk about slavery, all of a sudden...
You don't study the past, we're doomed to repeat it.
Right. You know, we have people screaming about, hey, let's not cancel. You know what I mean? But no. Let's not talk about this. Yeah. And listen, there's many variations on the theme. You know what I mean? I've had the argument, and I've had people say that makes me racist and I'm anti-Semite when I say, guess what? They didn't just kill Jews. Okay? Yeah, millions of Jews died, and it's horrible, and it was wrong. And I don't begrudge anybody that element because it's a tragedy. But guess what? Nobody else got a country. Yeah. Okay? You didn't see all the Romanian gypsies get their own country. Okay? You didn't see all the gays get their own country. Now, I'm not saying that Israel did not deserve to be. I'm not saying that any of this was anything more than a reflection of the time. But if we're going to be honest, let's be honest. The Nazis killed millions of people. They killed millions of Russians. They killed millions of Jews. They killed homosexuals. They killed political dissidents.
From whatever they wanted.
They killed Muslims. Yeah. They did not care in the element, except in the aspect if you did not fit into their very narrow element. Yep. And that's what they did. Okay.
Hello, Suzanne. You should show Suzanne the shirt.
Ah, yes, I will, because you inspired this, Suzanne. You know, being the Beaver Queen and all. This context now. Ta-da! Brother Jonathan was like, hey, that idea was really cool. He likes it. So let's make a t-shirt. So yes, this is going to go into production soon. It is going to be an official limited edition t-shirt. And it's, you know, again, if you blow smoke up someone's ass, don't surprise when they shit in your mouth. Now, we can make the variations on the whole artificial vanilla. I like this aspect. I think the artificial vanilla thing's a little bit played out. I think this sends a better message, which basically says, if you try and bullshit me, I'm going to shit in your mouth. I think that's a fair...
I think that's fair.
Exchange.
I do.
You want to try and gaslight me? You want to try and blow smoke up my ass? Then get in close. Here. Let me spread my ass cheeks so you can get in there deep. Ah, yes, there we go. You ready? Can you taste it? What better element? You know, listen, I really believe, again, I said this earlier. Listen, a lot of people want this t-shirt, which is why we're going to make it.
Right? We're going to make this shirt. It's going to have a few variations to it.
But listen, I think a lot of us, if not most of us here, can relate to the element of somebody bullshitting them, somebody gaslighting them, somebody manipulating them at some point in their lives, if not actively going on right now. And there's just kind of like, I don't know. I'm going to say it bluntly. The thought, it turns me on. It turns me on to think that cosmically, that karmically,